civil rights and human rights began. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Pro-Life Praise variety show. When we began this show, right in the midst of the announcement that the COVID pandemic was hitting the world. And at the end of March, going into April, we started with our Pro-Life Praise variety show. This show is brought to you on endabortion.tv. And one of my main topics as the Executive Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn, of course, is dealing with issues of the sanctity of human life from the womb to the tomb. And so when we consider in the womb, I asked you a question at the beginning of the show: when do human rights and civil rights begin? The obvious answer should be all of this begins in the womb. We are created in the image and likeness of God, and then we're born into this world. The Bible says that we're actually born into sin. Sometimes we're conceived in sin, and that's not really the topic of the show, but I'll explain just a little bit of that. David talked about being conceived and being in his mother's womb, King David in the Bible, in Psalm 51, as he's repenting for his sins and all of that. There's reference throughout the Bible of the babies in the womb. In the womb I knew you, in the womb I formed you. You knew me in my mother's womb. I was conceived in sin. So those types of scriptures let us know that the little baby in the womb is a human being. We can also know that the little baby in the womb is a human being when we think about the birth of Jesus and the birth of John the Baptist, when both of their mothers were expecting or pregnant and the men were in the wombs of their mothers. And so when Mary, the mother of Jesus, went to see the mother of John the Baptist, her cousin, John, as soon as Mary walked in, John jumped and leapt in his mama's womb. He was alive. He was quickened right there. So we know that the little babies in the womb are people. Life begins in the womb. Civil rights and human rights actually begin in the womb. They're not acknowledged because, especially here in America in the 21st century, in the year 2020, abortion is still legal in America. Babies in the womb can be killed legally in America, and it's not even acknowledged or called murder by human law. And so we're going to have a series of videos, and you'll hear discussions, a couple of songs. I'm going to play one of my favorite songs, and we've played it before on the show, This Is My Body. But that is something very important to consider. The Marfa 21 trailer, we'll show that again on the show. My goddaughter, Angela Stanton King, who this year is also a candidate for Congress in Georgia, 5th District in Georgia. However, she gives a very compelling discussion about life in the womb on a popular show called The Breakfast Club, and I'm going to play that clip as well. So I want you to consider or continue to think about human life. When does human life begin? It begins in the womb, when a baby is conceived, okay? So that's human life. When do civil rights begin? They should begin in the womb, but the little babies in America and around the world in many places don't have civil rights until they're born. Human rights should begin in the womb. So I asked a redundant kind of a question because I wanted you to think about that. So we'll go through this particular show which is being sponsored and brought to you on endabortion.tv, with some compelling information, some compelling questions, prayerfully some compelling answers as we think about the sanctity of human life.
We had a whole plan that sold abortions, and it was called sex education. Break down their natural modesty, separate them from their parents and their values, and become the sex expert in their life so they turn to us. When we would give them a low-dose birth control pill they would get pregnant on, or a defective condom. Our goal was 3 to 5 abortions from every girl between the ages of 13 and 18.
The multitudes of people that have been hurt by abortion, it's just unfathomable.
That abortion is really, to me, the ultimate exploitation of women.
It is so shameful and secretive that many women don't tell anybody that they've had an abortion.
They won't say anything for 20, 30, 40, 55 years. They're so traumatized. It's silence.
U.S. Senate report states, physicians, biologists, and other scientists agree that conception marks the beginning of the life of a being that is alive and is a member of the human species. There is an overwhelming agreement on this point in countless medical, biological, and scientific writings.
Planned Parenthood is expanding now. They're building gigantic abortion clinics in anticipation of socialized medicine.
There's a lot of money involved. We never would take personal checks. We always encourage the ladies to bring cash.
Why is that?
So, you don't have to report cash, friend.
When you're fighting for your life, you need to know what you're fighting for. And if what you're fighting for is life, how do you destroy a life in an effort to fight that fight? I'm fighting so hard to save myself that I'll kill someone else to get that.
I recognized I'd been involved in the death of 35,000 babies.
And the truth has really come out about what abortion does to women, let alone the unborn baby, our dead babies. It will be over.
This week at alvedaking.com, we're featuring How Can the Dream Survive? And that's my own testimony about my 2 abortions and the miscarriage that I experienced before I had that great awakening in 1983 as a born-again Christian, that those were little babies, those were people. I asked God to forgive me, even though I had been deceived and kind of coerced and tricked into having abortions myself. My grandfather saved me from abortion in 1950 when my mother was pregnant with me and she wanted to finish college. Abortion was illegal, but DNCs, or exploratory surgery to see why your stomach hurt and that kind of thing, were not illegal. And so she was not going to go to a back alley. She was going to go and have a procedure to see what was happening, and that procedure would have ended my life. And my grandfather convinced her to let me be born. My dad agreed with my grandfather, and I was able to be born. So we're going to sponsor that How Can the Dream Survive book at alvedaking.com. And please visit the Priest for Life bookstore, also online. There are many products and information and everything there for you if you want to explore the topic of the sanctity of life more.
I'm sorry, I'm also not a Democrat because of abortion. This is my thing. Roe v. Wade was passed off of a lie. As of right now, where we are, we're always crying about being an oppressed minority, but we are always going to be an oppressed minority if we continue to abort our offspring. Abortion is the biggest genocide against Black America. They strategically place their abortion clinics in our neighborhoods, and just about every time you hear a Democratic candidate go on stage, the first thing they say is Black women need access to abortion. So if we really want to restore the value to our own lives, if we really
you don't think
want
it's a
to
woman's
say,
right though, a woman's right for abortion.
I just
like,
want to.
if a girl, like let's say a 16-year-old girl was raped, or somebody was raped and they're pregnant, and they don't want to have that child, they don't want to have that experience. You don't feel like it's a woman's right to have an abortion?
so they talk about women's rights and women's choice. We need to first figure out why the government gave us the choice to kill our children and get away with it. Because as a man, you make the child. If you wanted to kill the baby, you would go to jail. You don't have a right to decide whether or not your child lives. Neither should a woman. Even in the instance of rape, let's just talk about it, because I've been raped before. I have a 27-year-old daughter that's a lawyer, still deciding to choose life, because at the end of the day, that child is still partly mine. Now, if you can't kill the person who raped you, why are we killing the child? And in addition to that, rape is only 1% of abortions. So the argument that's on the floor right now about abortion is the Democrats wanting to fund it. It's not necessarily taking away a woman's right, which I don't believe any woman should want to right. Because here's the thing, you taking away someone else's right to live.
Well, I'm definitely pro-choice, and I highly disagree.
I'm pro-choice, and one of the reasons I'll say that is because I think history has proven that when abortion was illegal, women were still having abortions, and they were doing them in very unsafe ways and dying from them. So that will still continue to go on. And then the only people who had access were people who could pay for private physicians, so that they were able to travel, go get that done, pay a large sum of money. So that actually endangered our people who were living in poverty because they couldn't afford to go to a private doctor.
Let me tell you something. A baby dies every time in an abortion. Every time a woman has an abortion, a baby dies. You can't say Black Lives Matter and don't include the Black lives that are in the womb. Now, when you're talking about healthcare,
is it a fetus or a baby?
Let's talk about it. Look up the definition of a fetus. A fetus is a human baby. Now, when you're talking about healthcare and in the Black community, we need to remember the Negro Project and Title X funds. When you go research the history of Planned Parenthood, the founder, Margaret Sanger, was a racist. The Negro Project was about them implementing birth controls into our population, into our communities, to keep us from populating, to keep us from reproducing. Now, the thing of it is, when you guys say you're pro-choice, you have to think about this, the word and the trick. Why is it pro-life and then pro-choice? Because the opposite of life is death. The choice is death. So what we have to decide now is when we are voting is, are you going to vote for your children, your future children to die, or your future children to live? Why not give them access to, it's a choice. What's the choice though?
Life or death.
Okay, so why would a mother choose death for her child? Everybody that's here, even all of us on this live, we got here because our mamas got pregnant. At the end of the day, it's somebody's life. So how is it that everybody that's advocating for abortion has never been aborted? How are you going to get someone else's right to live? Because if you understand lifespan development, you know that we all go from being an embryo to a fetus, to an infant, to a toddler, to a child, to a teenager. It's a life. So when you guys say
context matters though. Context matters though. If a woman got raped, and I understand you say it's less than 1%, but if a woman got raped, I wouldn't expect her to carry that child.
Okay, so let's just say that's fair, and that's the decision for it. If they say, okay, we're gonna make this exception, if a woman is raped, let her make that decision. We still ended somebody else's life that didn't commit the rape. Let's remember that. But what about the other 99%? What about the fact that every time you see an advertisement for Planned Parenthood, it's targeting Black women? What about the fact that 46% of our population has been aborted since 1974 when Roe v. Wade was passed? So when we're talking about the Black vote and how we are the minority, why are we not waking up and realizing that we are not only killing our own army, but also aborting our votes? So what I would like to do as a congressman, because I promise you, everybody is voting for our children to die on the Democrat side. I would love to bring balance. I would love to give opportunity to women, because look, you can't tell me that the only way I can survive or be successful is by having an abortion when I'm a woman that came home from prison and raised 4 kids on my own, which are all a blessing. So if we want them to value our lives, then we need to begin to value the lives of our offspring. My one vote on the floor The only thing it's going to do is bring balance, because at the end of the day, I want to save Black life.
I still believe in a woman's right to choose what to do with her body and her reproduction. And I still believe
because you
it is her body.
Don't have the same body, but you and your mother don't have the same body. It's not her body. So again,
it's inside of her body.
It's a baby inside of her body. It's still
an
embryo.
Baby.
So if you can live with,
I still feel that as history has shown, women are still going to have abortions, whether or not it's illegal, and it's a very dangerous practice.
So that's an excuse to support a racist organization that has wiped out half of our race.
We would rather to support what?
Is that an excuse to support a racist organization that has wiped out half of the Black race?
Planned Parenthood doesn't only provide, Planned Parenthood doesn't only provide abortions for people.
Let me tell you about
they do. They do a lot more work than that as well.
So does every other OBGYN. We don't need Planned Parenthood to provide those services. We can go to any health clinic and get those services. Not only that, Planned Parenthood was just offered $60 million from our federal government for those funds. To take care of those other programs. They walked away from it because the stipulation was that they couldn't use those funds to perform abortion.
In the freest nation in the world, our system of government and our very liberty depend on free and fair elections. Whether they're selecting a mayor or the president of the United States, every American must be able to trust the process or the democratic system itself breaks down. When someone commits voter fraud, the process is no longer fair. Everyone's vote gets diluted, and in some cases, election results are changed. Contrary to the claims of many on the left, voter fraud is a very real problem. As the Supreme Court noted when it upheld Indiana's voter ID law, flagrant examples of voter fraud have been documented throughout this nation's history. The National Commission on Federal Election Reform has said that in many close elections, fraud can absolutely change the outcome. Cases of local elections getting overturned because of fraud have occurred in New Jersey, Indiana, and many other states. Although the Heritage Foundation's voter fraud database has detailed cases of hundreds of people who've been convicted in recent years, the fact is voter fraud often goes undetected. And even when it's discovered, overburdened prosecutors rarely prioritize these cases. Fraudsters can steal votes and change election outcomes in several ways, including voting in someone else's name, registering in multiple locations to vote multiple times in the same election, voting even though they're not eligible because they're felons or they're non-citizens, or paying or intimidating people to vote for certain candidates. Unfortunately, many on the left are attempting to make election fraud easier by fighting laws that require an ID to vote. They've pushed to get non-citizens and jailed inmates to vote. And they've sued states that have tried to purge their voter rolls of people registered in multiple states. How can we fix the problem? Well, since states control much of the electoral process, they must pass laws requiring government-issued IDs to vote. That ensures people aren't stealing others' identities and their right to vote. States also should join voter registration cross-check programs to identify voters registered in multiple places. One cross-check program has identified hundreds of thousands of potential duplicate registrations across 30 states, as well as evidence of illegal double voting. States should also compare voter rolls with government records to identify convicted felons and non-citizens who should be removed from the rolls. And the federal government should cooperate with these efforts and make Department of Homeland Security and other databases available to state officials. Preserving this great experiment that is America depends on having free and fair elections where all Americans can trust the process and the results. Something as critical as election integrity can't be left to a simple honor system. One of the most important roles of government is to safeguard the electoral process and ensure that every voter's right to cast a ballot is protected. That not only protects our right to vote, that's how we protect the future of our very republic.
an empty shell without your love. I see you in the face of every child. This is my body, but you are always in my heart, always in my mind. If I could choose again, there'd be no choice for me but you. I'd do what I must do. I'd even give my life for you. This is my body. You cannot tell me what to do. It's not up to you. I will decide. This is my body, and I alone will choose. If this life within me lives or dies, this is my body. I'll do what I must do. This is my life. I will not sacrifice my life for you.
This is my body given up for you, that you might live eternally. This is my body, that thy will be done, not mine. Broken as the bread, crushed as the wine. This is my body. I do what I must do. I give my life a sacrifice of love for you. This is my body given up for you.
I have the right to choose. I have so much to lose. Don't tell me what to do.
This is my body, that thy will be done, not mine.
If I could choose again, there'd be no choice for me but you. I don't know you. I'll never hold you. You're always there, awake or in my dream.
I give my life.
This is my life. I cannot sacrifice my life. I would do anything for you. I can see no other way. The choice is me or you.
Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.
How can I forgive myself for what I've done to you?
My wounds have set you free. Do this in remembrance of me. This is my body given up for you, that you might live eternally. This is my body, yet I
Hi friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Would you join me for a moment in prayer from my book, Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day? Deuteronomy 32, verse 39, I put to death and I bring life. Reflection. No religion and no pro-life group advocates that we are obliged to take every single treatment and procedure available to keep us alive. Foregoing a worthless treatment is not and should not be called euthanasia or suicide. Yet while there are such things as worthless treatments, there is no such thing as a worthless life. We may reject a treatment. We must never reject a life. Let us pray. Give us your peace, O Lord, and give peace to all who are dying today. Amen. And may we care for them, brothers and sisters, in a way that reflects Christ. Our care for people from conception to natural death is, of course, the way that Christ urges us and commands us to go. It's the only appropriate response to a human person. Human rights begin when human lives begin, and not one moment later. And that means within the body of their moms. In the womb, life begins. And we have an interesting pro-life, encouraging pro-life step that was taken by the Trump administration in the Department of Health and Human Services early in President Trump's administration. They made an adjustment in their strategy memo that when the Department of Health and Human Services is talking about which human beings they serve, they made it clear that when talking about human beings, they mean from the womb. Life from fertilization, from the beginning, caring for human beings, both unborn and born, both in the womb and outside the womb. Thank God for a presidential administration that makes that point crystal clear as a matter of official strategy for the federal government. Let's continue to proclaim in any and every way possible that indeed human rights as human lives begin in the womb. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life. And I'm honored and grateful to have a show on endabortion.tv. God bless you. Friends, as we come to the end of the show today, we're going to end with our song, Pray for America. God bless you.